Namaskar, this is Nilesh Oak. Welcome back to the course on Introduction to Indian Calendar. In this module, we are going to look at how to calculate the Tithi. What are the mathematical calculations that are done by Panchang makers to calculate a specific Tithi, when it begins, when it ends. That's also true for calculating nakshatra. Again, a specific set of calculations are involved, and they are specific to a specific location. And therefore, for a given date, for example, say 23rd of May 2021, the Tithi and nakshatra for, say, Mumbai may not be the same for Atlanta, because both Tithi and Nakshatra are very specific to a given location on the surface of the earth. Slightly modified aspect is how to determine the Tithi of the day. So the first two is how to do the background calculations by taking into account the movement and the speed of the sun, the moon, and the number 3 and number 4 refer to actually determining the Tithi or Nakshatra of the day at any given location. Let's begin with the determination or the calculations behind the Tithi and Nakshatra. Let's begin with the Amavasya day. On this day, the sun and the moon are together as seen from the earth. When the right ascension or longitude of sun and moon are equal, that is when Amavasya ends. Now, from this point, we will calculate the time until the separation between the sun and the moon equals to 12 degrees. Keep in mind that as the clock runs, there will be a forward movement of the sun and also the forward movement of the moon. What we are looking for is the net delta of 12 degrees between these two celestial bodies. So visually, that would be equal to 1 Tithi. And multiples of those 12 degrees of separation between the sun and the moon leads to the subsequent Tithis. In any given lunar month, theoretically, there will be 30 Tithis. This is a very simple calculation. In a circle, there are 360 degrees, and we are dividing it by 12 degrees of separation. So that will give us 30 Tithis, the sun and the moon. Notice both sun and the moon have moved from their original positions. So we are looking for a net delta of 12 degrees between them. And when this occurs, we will say this is the end of the Pratipada Tithi, the first day of the lunar month. We repeat the same thing again. Now we are looking for a net separation of 12 times 2, that is 24 degrees. And when that occurs, that would be the end of next Tithi, which is Dvitiya. Now let's look at the nakshatra. So where I have marked the blue star, that's where the Uttara Bhadrapada nakshatra ends. What does that mean? Now the moon has entered the area of the next nakshatra, namely in this case Revati. When that is done, then moon would enter the area of the next nakshatra, Ashwini, And after that, it will be Bharani and so on until it goes through all the 27 nakshatras. So this is how the calculations are done. Now let us look at how the tithi and nakshatra of the day at any specific location is determined. Let's recall that the tithi is determined by the separation of 12 degrees between the sun and the moon, or multiples of 12 degrees between the sun and the moon. Keep in mind that both sun and the moon are moving along the ecliptic. Naturally, moon is moving much faster than the sun, as seen from the earth, of course. And so that determines the tithi. Now let's recall how the nakshatra changes. It is purely decided by the position and the movement of the moon along the ecliptic and along this path of nakshatras. Now, how do we decide the specific tithi and specific nakshatra of a given day? Very simple rule in Indian Panchanga, Indian calendar. To decide the tithi or a nakshatra for a given day at a specific location, what we need to know is the time of sunrise at that particular location. So let us say day 1, and this is the time of sunrise. What do you notice? Moon is still in the area of Uttara Bhadrapada Nakshatra, and the tithi is Pratipada. So for this day, but at that specific location of that sunrise, the Panchang will read tithi as Pratipada and nakshatra as Uttara Bhadrapada. Now, when would be the next sunrise? Approximately after 24 hours. Keep that in mind. This is not true. And I'm not referring to just a slight variation from that 24 hours, but depending on the latitudes, depending on the hemisphere, and depending on the time of the year, the season and whatnot, the sunrise and sunset can drastically change. It's important to realize that this Indian calendar was designed for India in mind. And actually, if you look at the ancient Indian astronomy text, to remove all these variations and biases, they assumed the location of Lanka. In fact, that's why the Lanka is so important for making astronomy observations and for its use as a reference point. So Lanka is right on the equator. So therefore, the sunrise on the equator would not vary too much. Okay, so next day sunrise would be in about 24 hours. Whatever that timing is, so that's our day 2, and that's the sunrise. Now what do we notice? We notice that the tithi is Dvitiya and nakshatra is Revati. Fine, that's what we noted down. And then another 24 hours, now day 3 sunrise, and notice what do we see? We'll say the tithi is Tritiya and nakshatra is Bharani, which means there was a Kshaya nakshatra, like Ashwini was never assigned in this round to any day as the nakshatra of the day. For day 1, it was Uttara Bhadrapada. For day 2, it was Revati. For day 3, it was Bharani. So Ashwini, essentially, as if we skipped the nakshatra, that is called a Kshaya nakshatra. And we have seen the definition of a Adhika nakshatra, Kshaya nakshatra, or nakshatra vruddhi, that is another word that is used, as well as Adhika tithi or tithi vruddhi and Kshaya tithi in the previous module. And that's it, guys.